guys, guess what? It's Wednesday. It's also day 18 of 21 Days of Prayer. So glad that you're with us today. And we're just looking forward to just diving a little bit deeper as been talking about the loving God and loving people. More emphasis today probably on loving people than what we had before about loving God and why, we should love. Matthew 22 says it like this, but when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees with this reply, they met together to question him again, and one of them, an expert in religious law, tried to trap him with this question, "Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses?" And Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second one is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself." And the entire law, all the prophets hang on. That's what the King James says. Hang on these two commandments: to love God, to love people. And so why are we to love? John 13 says, "Now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." So the first thing we must see about loving one another, that it is simply a commandment. It's not a suggestion. It's not a recommendation. It's a commandment from God. Matter of fact, 1 John 3 says it like this, "And this is his commandment. We must believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he commanded us." Why are we to love? Because Jesus commanded us to love. We're not talking about trust. We're just talking about love. And so, plain and simple, we're commanded to love people. And because love is an indispensable mark of a true Christian. If you're a believer, guess what? You are a lover of people. Number two, who are we to love? Leviticus 19 says, "Do not seek revenge or bear grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." So in the Old Testament, the Jews, of course, were commanded to love their neighbor. In other words, they were commanded to love anyone who lived close to them, anyone they ran into, anyone who crossed their path. And so we have to remember that the Jews, of course, were a mixed multitude. Some were like true, hard followers, believers of God, like Abraham and Jacob and Joseph and Samuel and Moses and David, people like that. But some of them were just, they weren't all in. And so you got to recognize, just like today, some people are all in and some people are not, but we still have to love the people that cross our path. Matter of fact, Luke 10 says like this. Jesus says, "The lawyer asked, 'Who is my neighbor?' The Jew in Jesus' day did believe that you had to love your neighbor, but it was taught among them that it was a duty before God to hate your enemy, and it all depends on who your neighbor is and who your enemy is." And so Jesus kind of came and switched that all up. Matter of fact, Romans 9 says like this. He says, "I am not saying that the promise of God has failed, for not all the people of Israel are the people of God." Let me say it like this again. John 13. "So now I give you a new commandment. Love each other just as I've loved you. You should love each other, and your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." So 3 different times, Jesus answered our question, who are we to love? Each other or one another? Let's start by asking who Jesus was speaking to. That's an easy one. Jesus was speaking to his 11 disciples. By this time, Judas had already left the group, and the 11 disciples were with Jesus Christ. And Jesus was speaking to the true believers, members of his church. Jesus looked at his disciples and said, "You disciples are mine, and you are to love each other." So to put it another way, members of his church are to love members of his church. Christians are to love other Christians. We're to love people, not just people who we see. We should love the people in our church. We should love other believers, but also we got to love that other person, at the Target, at the Walmart, at the Winn-Dixie, or wherever, Food Line, wherever you shop. I know Winn-Dixie's not here, but you get the point. Jesus told us we're to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. Yes, we are to love all mankind without exception, right? God loves the whole world in a general way, but he loves the church. He loves the church in a special way. How do I know that? Galatians 6 says like this: "Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially to those who are in the family of faith. So love people, but also let's make sure we're loving the people extra, in the church extra hard. And Romans 12 says like this, as I wrap it up: love one another warmly as Christians and be eager to show respect for one another. Let's respect each other. Let's love each other. Let's support each other. Let's encourage each other. Let's speak life over each other so the world would know that we are disciples of Christ. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow on the Faith for Today podcast.